One of the special events that I witnessed, I was on the USS Coral Sea, and one day we had kind of a crazy team come aboard. They were all dressed up in powder blue flight suits and stuff. There was about somewhere around 40 to 50 of them, and they all had fancy ball caps on, and they brought a specialized truck aboard that was all powder blue painted, and it turned out to be a refueling truck. They cleared the flight deck. They took all the aircraft off the flight deck, jammed them into the hangar deck, or stuck them out all the way up on the bow on the starboard side, or all the way aft behind the island structure on L3. So from L1 and the island forward, and the island aft of L3 was all stacked airplanes as tight as they could get them. We knew something was coming up special, but we didn't know what. They never announced anything. I was fortunate enough to be able to go up to the island structure, and I was up at Pry-Fly up there, and I was watching what was going on. And a U-2, an Air Force U-2 Spyplane, is in the approach pattern. And he comes flying around, and the ship is going about 30 plus knots, and we're into the wind, and he makes a come around, fly by, and then come around again. And then we noticed this long stinger coming out the back end of it from the middle of the aircraft out and down, and it looked like it was about 20 feet long and had a hook point on the end of it. So I understand that they recalibrated the tension and stuff on the wires with the proper weight for the aircraft to trap. And the plane made a landing and stopped almost instantly. It hooked the number 2 wire, and the wire barely pulled out, and the plane stopped on the flight deck within a matter of like 40 feet, and it was landed. They had to slow the ship down to keep it from bouncing around a little bit. And these guys in the powder blue suits ran out there. They had a gadget that looked like the bow of a bow and arrow, and it had 2 casters on the bottom of it. And they ran out with 2 of them, hooked them on the underside of the U-2 wing, and then they unhooked the plane from the wire, and about 20 of them pushed the airplane forward, turned it. They brought the refueling truck out, and they topped it off with fuel, and the guys pushed it back out on the fantail. The pilot got in it and started it up and everything, and they launched them. He didn't use a catapult or anything else. All they did was increase the speed of the ship again. With the speed of the ship and the airflow that he had and the power from the engine, that thing took off in about 40 feet or 50 feet. And he was airborne and flew away, came around, made some passes, and he did this all day long. they qualified him, and as I understood what was happening, we realized that once they had shot down Gary Powers in a U-2 Spyplane over Russia that had been launched from Turkey, the Turks got chewed out by the Russians for allowing him to take off from there. So they had to figure out what other areas were close enough that the spy plane could fly over and do reconnaissance work over Russia and Afghanistan and the other stands and part of India and everything else. And what better way to do it if the countries wouldn't give us permission to land or take off from their country? Then we could bring a carrier, any of the carriers we had, up close enough, and the plane had the endurance to fly for almost forever up there if it got the right winds and everything, and do all kinds of reconnaissance. They had proved that it could land and take off of the Coral Sea, and I don't know from that point on when or how it was used, but it is still used till this day as reconnaissance. I know when I was with the exchange with the 111 program in Thailand, we had the U-2s landing there, and I also know that before and after, when I was in Vietnam area, that the U-2s came in and landed there, and they were doing reconnaissance. But they always seemed to take off at night and land at night. I was proud that we were able to perform that on the Coral Sea as an exercise and show the Air Force that we could handle them. Another special event I went to, this is in the late 50s. We had F9F Panthers, F9F6 Panthers, and the sixth version had the swept wings on it. We were requested to attend an air show with 6 of our planes and a maintenance crew, and I was fortunate to be part of the maintenance crew that was selected, and we went to Oklahoma City, and the Air Force was just showing off their version of the F-11 fighter. The F-11 fighter was a new secret one that had little stubby wings, and we got a look at it when we were in Oklahoma, and they had to put special battens on it because the wings were so thin that they were afraid that they would be damaged with wind and everything. And it looked like a sleek little rocket airplane. And the Air Force had 2 of them there, and they were showing them off for the first time. And we were on the flight line. We'd already done our share of the show and stuff. And then the 2 Air Force planes took off, and they were going to make a flyby. When they got over Oklahoma City, they hit the burner. And when they hit the burner, they caused so much damage. Oklahoma sued them for $100,000 worth of window damage. And the Air Force had to pay the bill. I don't know if they were supposed to go in burner or if they just decided to put out a little extra show to show that they could go from whatever speed they were in to rocket speed. But they were too low, and it made a boom that just wiped the city out. So, if you've ever listened to a sonic boom, it is loud when it hits you. So it hurts the eardrums. Another event I was involved in when I was the senior maintenance officer at the Aircraft Maintenance Department at Miramar, at North Island. And that was right towards the end of my last cruises and stuff in my last 30 years. I had turned down a deployment to be the F-18 and do the introduction of the F-18 into the Navy at Lemoore, California, and I was going to be the Air Wing maintenance officer. And I said, no, I didn't really want to do that. And I said, for once, I wasn't going to leave the family, and I had the kids in school and stuff. And we had my wife had a beautiful job in San Diego. We had our home there, and we just didn't want to move to Lemoore, California. And I asked my detailer if I could take any other billet, and he said, John, you know that is a step forward. That's a ticket punch to make captain. And I had already said I'm 18 pay grades higher than I ever thought I'd get. So I really don't want to go this time. What are my other options? And he said, you can go to Washington and you can be an errand boy at Nav Air. And I said, no, don't want to move. He said, well, I know you don't want to go back to sea, but the only other billet I've got is as the inspector crew that goes out, inspects all the carriers and all of the squadrons and stuff on safety and operations and things. And that means you're going to go out there and you're going to police all of the guys that you worked with for years that are your buddies. And if they're not doing something correct, you got to write them up. And I said, I don't want to do that. And they said, well, I have one last billet. And you've already had the AIMD at Miramar, you've already had AIMD out in Guam, you've already had AIMD afloat. So I'm going to put you back to AIMD North Island. And I said, put me in, coach. And he said, you know what you're doing? And I said, thank you, I know what I'm doing, and that's what I want. So I went there, and if I had stayed and gone and introduced the F-18, I only had a 50% chance of getting to the top of the pyramid and making captain in the 1520 community. And I was in competition with guys that had all kinds of degrees and everything. And I said, why should I sacrifice all of my moving and move the kids and everything? And I was going to retire, and so I made my decision.